June 2024 sees the biggest shakeup to Nintendo's board of directors in many years. The company's articles of incorporation state that it can have up to 20 directors if it so chooses. But at the present time, the company has only 10. That will change when, subject to the 27th of June annual general meeting of shareholders, 4 new directors will join the board, with 1 person retiring, making the new directorial team 13 strong. For a small group, that's a big change. So what's going on? Who's going? Who's joining? Why them? What will the impact of these changes be? And for that matter, why have a shake-up at all? Settle in, whack like and subscribe, and let's go through all the details. First, let's take a quick look at the career of the person who is retiring. Masao Yamazaki is an outside director of the company, and Nintendo's governance report identifies his areas of skills and expertise as being business risk management, as well as financial, accounting and tax affairs. This makes sense. He's a certified tax accountant, and Japanese companies are mandated to secure at least 1 independent director who can act as a company auditor to protect the interests of the general shareholders. Good practice is this to be somebody without conflicts of interest with the general shareholders as well. Now, Nintendo has other people who class as independent officers. Katsuhiro Umeyama also qualifies as an independent officer under the rules of the Tokyo Stock Exchange, as he is also a certified tax accountant with what Nintendo describe as a thorough knowledge of corporate accounting, that absolute party animal. They also have the benefit of Asa Shinkawa, currently the only female member of the board, and described as having a thorough knowledge of legal affairs as an attorney at law. She does qualify to be an independent officer, but has not been filed as such, perhaps because her area of expertise is more legal than accounting, and Nintendo already has the benefit of people with skills more germane to the position in Umeyama-san. In any case, Nintendo will still have plenty of people with financial experience to share. Okay, let's zone in on the 4 people who are joining the board of directors. First up is Yusuke Beppu, who is the only internal appointment. Beppu-san's name may not ring a bell, although he is currently a senior executive officer and senior director in the corporate planning department. Basically, the executive officers can also be directors. They're under the management of EPD head honcho Shinya Takahashi. But there are many more executive officers, and they're really in charge of the nuts and bolts of the business, Doug Bowser and Yoshiaki Koizumi being perhaps the most well-known faces. I'll circle back round to looking at the executive officers in another video, as they're an interesting group and it speaks a lot to Nintendo's management structure, but for now, we only need to know that Yusuke Beppu was promoted to being an executive officer in the 2018-19 financial year and given responsibility for the business development division, an area of responsibility which did not have an executive attached prior to this. However, he has had a long history with Nintendo. Starting at an advertising agency with strong experience in research analysis, he has now been with Nintendo well over 2 decades, being instrumental in 2002 in establishing the Club Nintendo loyalty program. In an Iwata Ask segment, he explained one of his first roles at Nintendo was in Nintendo's Organizational Information Department, which the translator notes sounds like, in essence, the marketing department. Beppu-san commented, "There I would make proposals regarding what products or services would be necessary in order to have as many customers enjoy our products as possible." With an interest in deriving precise demographic data, he began a rather eccentric Wii channel for organization called We No Ma Company Limited, which tried to make advertisements into entertainment in their own right. The use of this was explained as follows. When putting out a new product, the developers have a hypothesis about who would be using their product as they make it, and I think whether it's actually being well received by the intended audience, or whether they're glad they bought it, or whether they'll want to buy the next thing, validating these things is what leads to the next. But there's actually not that many ways to measure it, so it would be great if We No Ma will be able to help in some way. One interesting detour of his Iwata Ask segment is how he prioritised making a meeting room with a tea table to match the tea table on the channel, a tea table he carefully sourced and which he explained to him represented the warmth of Nintendo. I quote, "My understanding is that Nintendo began making Hanafuda 120 years ago and playing cards 107 years ago. Although this can be said of the Famicom that was released 26 years ago as well, I feel that it's a company that has continued to come up with these kinds of fun ideas, specifically because they're the kind of entertainment that can be shared in places that people come together, like the tea table. So I felt that the tea table is another piece of Nintendo's identity. The world is moving more and more towards personalization, but it's because we're in that kind of age in particular that I wanted to feel that warmth provided by the tea table. He also suggested the Wii U's network service should use Mii characters, and seems to have been particularly involved in Nintendo's efforts in film and television. He has 2 Internet Movie Database credits, most recently as a credited producer on the Super Mario Bros. Movie, but he also has a credit for the role of creative management on 1 episode of the Kirby animated series. He is a director of Nintendo Systems, the company Nintendo recently set up with DNA to work on their account systems and online infrastructure. Although Beppu sounds not exactly a household name even to the legions of Nintendo diehards that will be watching this video, it's clear he has a long history and deep understanding of Nintendo and a skill set in marketing and analysing marketing that will be incredibly useful to Nintendo going forward. After all, the kind of data it once struggled to get is now readily available through their digital infrastructure, and if I were to hazard a guess, given they have already talked about the centrality of the Nintendo account system to their business continuity going forward, Yusuke Beppu will be one of the people most closely associated with that project in the future. This may also be a long-term move reflecting the relative age of the general manager of the marketing division and the licensing division, Satoru Shibata, who joined the company in 1985. At 63, he's far from the oldest member of the board of directors, but nevertheless he is of an age where it will be prudent for the company to begin thinking about succession planning in such a key and wide-ranging role. But apart from Yusuke Beppu, Nintendo are also inviting 3 further members onto their board of directors. Now I suspect that there is a little bit of a political dynamic here. Japan has mandated that listed companies should have 30% of their board of directors be women by 2030. Obviously at present that number is 10%, so adding 3 further women brings them to pretty much exactly the 30% threshold, 4 out of 13 working out at a shade north of 30%. Still, Nintendo aren't dishing out plum directorships to just anyone, and these 3 people have some interesting backgrounds. Miyoko Demei joined Manhattan-based luxury jeweler Tiffany & Company in 1992 and worked her way up to becoming the president of Tiffany & Company Japan Incorporated in 2021, as well as her current role in that company of Senior Executive of Luxury Strategy and Operations. Although luxury jewellery might seem to be a far reach for Nintendo, I can see a logic. Firstly, any large and diversified international company will have insights to offer Nintendo, and especially one that trades in items that are high value and intended to surprise and delight. But there is a particular reason I can imagine Demei-san's appointment could benefit Nintendo. Any jeweler in particular has to consider acquisition of metals in a competitive market while demonstrating the appropriate levels of corporate responsibility. And if you think that's not a major interest of Nintendo's, just check out the company's own smelter list. Yes, it has a smelter list, and it shows an absolutely vast array of countries from which it acquires precious metals. Tiffany has, it claims, pioneered what it calls nature-based solutions to sourcing rare metals, and was rewarded with approval from the Science Based Targets Initiative, SBTI, a corporate climate organization. Nintendo relies heavily on sourcing obscure metals, and with global instability and new scrutiny on corporate choices, I can imagine having contacts in a major international firm that also faces these challenges could be exceedingly useful. Then there is Ayuko Osawa, who has worked for a number of law firms and registered in 2021 as a certified tax accountant, which means that she is already on the board of Exio Group as an outside auditor. For her day job, she is currently a supervisory director of the Misui Furusan Logistics Park Incorporated, which is a real estate investment trust company which invests in logistics facilities in Japan and overseas. I'm going to say that again, a real estate investment trust company investing in logistics facilities in Japan and overseas. Here I feel the potential benefits for Nintendo of this appointment are only too apparent. Logistics is always an issue for any company, but traditionally Nintendo have been very invested in China and Taiwan, but now is seeking to diversify its operations, moving production to Vietnam in 2019 for the Nintendo Switch, as well as making several real estate choices not related to production, including new shops and offices. Currently, it appears that they do not own any of the theme park space they take up, but it would not surprise me if this is a long-term goal of the company. having an expert in real estate investment as an outside director can only help in this respect, especially when that person also has legal and tax expertise. Finally, there is Keiko Akashi, who is a certified tax accountant, a former director of multiple regional taxation bureaus in Osaka, and an outside auditor to a spectacles and eyewear chain. This is the director candidate who I have least to say about because I think we all appreciate why Nintendo would want someone with deep knowledge of tax on their board. Although for those of you who think there is a likelihood that Nintendo will want to pivot into the virtual reality or augmented reality space, perhaps a link to somebody who audits a spectacles and eyewear chain could prove to be useful, although I really don't think this was part of the consideration in appointing Akashi-san to the board. So there we have it, but for a broad look at Nintendo's shareholders and indeed the companies in whom Nintendo owns shares, you're probably going to want to look at this video on the screen. And can I take this opportunity to suggest you like and subscribe as well to see more videos like this, including a focus on Nintendo's executive officers. As ever, I just want to thank everybody so much for watching and supporting the channel. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.